What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Against All Authority, a ska punk band from Florida I have reacted to before. Their 1998 album, All Fall Down, is on Hopeless Records. My understanding is that in the mid-2000s they broke up, though I do think they performed a 30th anniversary event or concert in the early 2020s here, so I don't know exactly their status currently. But yes, they have a very distinct style of ska punk. The punk side of their songs is fast and adrenaline fueled, and then most of them also have ska sections where it gets very like horn heavy and skanking, almost like happy type ska. So there's a bit of a contrast, not just across their catalog, but even in a lot of their individual songs, which I enjoy. And in some ways they remind me of later groups like Leftover Crack, although like more ska heavy than Leftover Crack. In any case, we're gonna listen to a song, What the Fuck Do You Expect? And like fucked is F-U-C-K apostrophe D, like a contraction. And it speaks to a narrative that I think critiques many different things. I think it critiques broken, or I was going to say broken families, but poor parenting. I think it critiques societal indifference toward economic disparities. I think it critiques the cultural exploitation of certain types of lifestyles. I think it critiques the societal condemnation of peoples whose life struggles they know nothing about. I think it critiques the political failings of modern societies more broadly, and maybe American society specifically. So yes, it talks about a young boy who is not given enough to eat. His family lives in a trailer park, and his mom can't quite make ends meet. His father's a drunk who gets violent and beats him, and before you know it, he's, let's say, going off the rails, and he begins drinking himself, presumably underage, and he starts spending a lot of time at a tattoo shop, and he's getting tattoos that reflect his tough life. And the song even makes the point that the people at the tattoo parlor, they're more of a family than ever his real family was, than his parents ever were. But eventually he starts engaging in petty crime, stealing things from cars and so on. He eventually steals a gun. Meanwhile, he's descending further into substance abuse and alcoholism, so he ends up shooting someone and killing them I think it says like in a parking lot. He then ends up in jail because society wants to lock him away and not have to think about the socioeconomic conditions and, familial failures in our modern society that led to where he made those choices and caused that harm. But then it talks about how culture likes to, make money off of that type of imagery of, whether it's someone who's a gangster and, who's cool because, they look good and have tattoos and, just do whatever they want, which is very much marketable when it comes to music and movies and so on. And some of the same people making money off of those types of images are, of course, not doing anything to change the conditions that lead to the tragic real-life stories of those type of life arcs and events. And it essentially makes the point, well, what the fuck did you expect? You have a society that, allows these economic disparities to exist, who doesn't do much to ameliorate them, who punishes the products of them rather than attacking the roots and spending the resources to try to find solutions and provide outlets for kids who are in danger of falling into criminal circles and so on. And then again, you make these lifestyles attractive to people who are vulnerable because, again, whether it's, through glamorizing those lifestyles with music or, making money off of them in films and so on. So you put all these conditions together, you allow them to fester without being addressed, or even, make excuses for them, like, well, some people just are better at making money than others, and you don't address the problems that arise or the conditions that make it very hard for some people to break out of those cycles and so on. Well, you're going to get someone who could have led a different life, could have been, a productive member of society, but instead ends up, going off the rails and shooting and killing someone. So what the fuck did you expect? So again, sonically, this is another one which has rip-roaring punk rock and mellow, skankadelic type ska rhythms in the same song. Let's give it a listen. This is Against All Authority. What the fuck do you expect? From their 1998 album All Fall Down on Hopeless Records.
She didn't need him, she couldn't feel him, and his father gets drunk, and then he cleans them. They run down to the party, slips out at night, when it gets dark, yeah. He's gotta get out, oh yeah, he's gotta get away, and he doesn't really care what the thing. He needs another drink on the night, he's getting it on, full of it, cause he got beat, and the way we're on his skin, the bar looks at me at home has never been. Well, what the fuck was back to the do? He had no choices, and you have no clue. I'll turn back to do in a world full of hate, there's nothing new. Gotta feel that I never had from the bottom of the spoon. Good fuckers are in no turning back. Gotta get from the color, it's contract. I rolled down the avenue. What the fuck you expect him to do? A nickel rock, a gunshot in a parking lot. Somebody drop. Well, what the fuck you expect him to do? Get a job like you, and all he ever knew was surviving the streets. Gold in my clothes with being blackened, but it's gonna be hard because that's the way it is. No locked in a case, so no one has to see me. It's easy to forget society, and it's only half locked away. But when the weather pay for the sun, I remember to kids every day. Now he's locked in a case, so no one has to see me. It's easy to forget that society, I'm being a half. What the fuck you expect him to do in a world full of hate? There's nothing new. You gotta feel that I never had from the bottom of the spoon. Motherfuckers are in no turning back. Gotta get from the color and contact. Now you roll down the avenue. What the fuck you expect him to do? Hey! Well, what the fuck you expect? Hey! Well, what the fuck you expect?
What did you expect? So yeah, I remembered most of those lines. There were a couple that I was failing to recall in advance. The idea that, like, he couldn't get a job and, be productive like he's supposed to because his early life conditioned him to just essentially survive, and ultimately all he knew was trying to survive on the streets. And in some cases, and because society is the way it is and it lets communities fall into disrepair rather than using public resources to try to help communities, have outlets and build up in ways that are more sustainable in the long term, then the only thing he ever knew was having to be tough and to, again, threaten others and use weapons and so on. So this is the environment the world created. His parents didn't help. They pushed him further into vulnerable status, and then he did his best to survive given everything around him and what he had come to know by that point, which again was a brutal, unfeeling world in which maybe sometimes using violence and committing crime was the only way to get by. So what did you expect? And yes, ultimately I think it's a painfully, if also cleverly written song. I do love their ska sections in particular. I do also enjoy that a lot of their songs seem to have two vocalists, one who has like a higher pitched voice and, sort of sings like, I don't know, like almost like he's doing a voice, he's like affecting a voice, and then there's a more like lava, like, charcoal, like heavier, scratchier voice that kind of responds. So it's like there's, two narrators going back and forth. So I enjoy that dynamic, and again, I love the rip-roaring punk rock mixed with very smooth and groovy type ska sections, which this is another perfect example of that. So yeah, it is very much reflective of their style, at least so far as I know, which is to say, I only have this album All Fall Down, but I have heard some other songs of theirs from other albums, whether, in the like early 2000s, when Napster was a thing and so on. So I do believe I have at least a handful of other tracks from their catalog, even though this is the only physical release of theirs I ever had. I think this is only my third Against All Authority reaction, so we'll have many more to go in the coming weeks, months, and beyond. So do let me know what you think, and Luca and I will see you next time. Peace.